Greetings, everyone. Well, it's really late here. It's about 10 p.m., but I had an incredibly busy day, and I just wanted to pop on here because my goal was to do a live earlier, but I was working on a few deadlines for clients. So here it is, 10 o'clock, and it's going to be a uh, short visit. But I wanted to just remind everyone that we really need to be super careful about how we're spending our time. And, and this is coming from quite a few people that I've spoken with lately. Some of them have been clients, some have been potential clients, some have been colleagues. And, it seems like, and I don't know if it's because the time just changed. We are in daylight savings time right now. So I've felt this as well. Like it seems like, every year when the time changes, obviously it's great because we get an extra hour of daylight. However, for the first few days, I feel like, oh, like it's just like wet, like 2 hours went by or 3 hours went by. But that I know is just temporary and it seems to happen like right around the time changing. Whereas, like in the fall, when we fall back, sometimes then I feel, and maybe it's psychological, but sometimes I feel like, oh, I've got all this time, So it's kind of interesting how, our perspectives change. But we really want to make sure that, whatever our list of things to do is during the day, you know, having less things on our list is definitely ideal. And I would put my hand up in the air for the person that had more of like a laundry list years ago. And then I learned, really just having 1 to 5 things, five being the max of to-dos every day because I would keep this running list and when I didn't accomplish something, then I would carry it over and then, the next day or the day after that, uh, it just wasn't productive. So, in order to cut this habit out, I started keeping track of the 1 to 5 things that I was going to do every day on index cards, just so that it was more top of mind, and that was very helpful. So I don't know if your goal is to have create a bigger impact, then you probably want to scale back your list of things to do, or as I've perhaps you heard me talk about this before, but you know, sometimes it's necessary to have a not to do list. And that not to do list isn't to overwhelm you with another list, but to remind you of what you shouldn't do, like, the not to do's. And I found that to be extremely helpful, especially back, like when we go back 4 years, because I was working with a lot of clients that were not accustomed to working from home. So they had to make that adjustment. And some of them were really in stressful situations because they were trying to, launch another business, another source of revenue. In some cases, their offices were restricted or shut down, and they were, looking to build a separate revenue stream or, a side gig that they could do, but then struggling with, oh my gosh, but I'm working from home. It doesn't feel right. They were used to an office environment. And on their not to do lists were, watching Netflix during doing household chores, you know, playing with the dogs and cats too much. Like these were things that we had to identify because in both of the examples that I'm giving you, they were not finding enough time. They didn't think they had enough time for revenue producing activities. But then when we were able to put a spotlight on everything they were doing, of course, we were able to figure out together that, you know, they're going to have to restrict themselves and not do the household activities or household chores when they're supposed to do revenue producing activities, like meaning, looking for clients or talking with potential clients. And the same with Netflix. There was uh, a client of mine who was trying to launch another source of revenue for his coaching. And, this is normal. I mean, like, it's normal to have resistance on certain activities. And he really didn't know what to do to try to get clients. And so he would get lost in watching a lot of these documentaries, thinking, well, maybe this will inspire me. Maybe, I'll start doing the prospecting after I watch this show, or after I finish this documentary. But really getting super clear on what are the activities that are going to really move the needle. We've all heard that saying, but really what's going to make the biggest impact in your business. And that needs to be identified. But if there are things like maybe it is like doing laundry or something, then you may have to have that on your not to do list when you are working on your prospecting. Like, let's say, that you are working from home. Doesn't matter if you're working for yourself or you're working for a company. If you find yourself getting distracted, or if you find yourself like, just like, well, maybe I'll just, put a load of laundry in, or maybe I'll fold the clothes, pay attention to what you're resisting, because in a lot of cases, what you're resisting is what you should be doing. And while it doesn't sound like a big deal, like, well, I'm working from home today, I'll put the laundry in, that can be a distraction sometimes, and that can take away from precious time when, if if you are responsible for the metrics or the KPIs, whatever your company calls them, or just the sales quotas, then do yourself a favor and really make sure that you're focusing on those revenue producing activities during the time of the day when it's at its peak, or if you're DMing prospects, or making phone calls or sending emails, you want to do those at the most likely time when maybe you could have a DM conversation, right? Or maybe you could have a phone conversation or corresponding with email. So pay attention to those things, because especially if you are a person that maybe you're also used to working in an office environment, and even having a hybrid, 1 or 2 days a week, maybe that's challenging for you. Really try to restrict yourself and be like, okay, I'm not doing anything else besides, revenue producing activities, let's say between like 8 and 2 or something like that, or whatever your work hours are, 9 and 1. And then perhaps you take a break, and then do, really focus time from 2 to 5. But once you get into the routine, then you're going to feel really good about it, and especially when you see results. But if you are starting prospecting, or you're looking to really, 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 boost up your business, then what you're doing today, in a lot of cases, you will see some improvement in 30 days, but you're going to see big improvement in 90 days from now, especially if you're in a sales role. So pay attention, because every day that you're making you're making progress and you're making those best choices to focus on revenue producing activities, that's only going to benefit you and you're going to continue to build up more momentum. In my coaching practice, I work with businesses that are starting up as well as, midstream and even, later stage businesses who have been around for a while, but possibly they're looking to launch a new revenue stream or they're looking to launch a new service or a product. So, you know, it all takes effort and it all takes focused energy toward, what's really going to get you to your goals or what's really going to get your company to achieve and exceed those targets. So pay attention to the little things like, I like to work in 15-minute increments and I teach my team to work in 15-minute increments as well. Because if we give ourselves too much time to do these tasks, then, that's less time that we could be spending on other things. And in a lot of cases, when we're building, whether it's just another revenue stream or perhaps, you're launching your business, it's super important that we focus on the time. So I'd also like to invite anybody that maybe has some ideas or some, you know, uh, time tips, do share those. I was in a course a few years back. It was before COVID. And it really taught me a lot because it really showed me how important it is to really embrace the fact that we do have an abundance of time. Now, when I think back, like when I was first starting my career with AT&T, I never felt like I had enough time. Like that was a mindset. That was something that I really had to overcome because I I was always do, going, and at that time I was, oh my gosh, may not sound like a lot now, but I was making a minimum of 150 cold calls a week, sometimes more. And then in person, it may have been 30, it may have been 50 calls a week, because at that time, it required, driving. So I could drive to like a business or business park or industrial area and then literally just like go in the buildings and make all the cold calls. But now we have options. Like I was saying, right? We have, DM chats, we have texts, we have emails, of course, you can call people if people answer their phones, but uh, we can schedule meetings, But the thing is that we have to be mindful of how we're spending our time. So if you can schedule 15-minute increments, like I do this even when I'm doing like my chores in the morning. I'll set my timer for 15 minutes or I listen to this high frequency music and that happens to be right around 15 minutes. So I'll try to get the clothes folded. Like so it always seems like I'm doing laundry because my son's home from spring break and my daughter's here, so I am doing a lot of laundry, but I set my timer or I'm listening to the high frequency music for 15 minutes and then I try to get that all done in 15 minutes. And then if I have other chores that day, like I was cleaning toilets the other day or dishwasher loading or unloading, whatever, I try to get those done in 15 minutes. And then I do that with my work tasks too. If I'm, doing social media, if I'm posting for a client, if I'm doing some client work. And yes, it may take multiple 15-minute sessions, but I try to get as much done as I can. Like if I'm working on content planning, I try to get as much done in those 15-minute increments, as possible. Because I found that if I don't push myself to that, and be like, okay, I want to maximize my time. I want to get as much done as I can in 15 minutes. I used to think that I just had a feeling that I could have gotten stuff done in a shorter amount of time. Because in my case, if I would give myself more time, that, it can be time wasted. So just be mindful of that and listen to your intuition. I'm a big believer in, you know what's right. So I would love to hear other people share in the comments, what are some of your time tips? I know that when I was exclusively coaching, I was just doing executive coaching. This was before I was doing the sales and marketing coaching. And whenever, we would identify that a client didn't, when they felt they didn't have enough time, so obviously it was like a time abundance, time mindset thing. Like I went through when I was first out of college and working with AT&T. Then what we did was first we did a time study to figure out, where were they spending their time. And I had them, I know it sounds cumbersome, but if you do it for like even a week, 7 days, 10 days, then it just, really gives you all the clues that you need so that you can, really make sure that you're maximizing your time, that you're not having, this idle time when you could get things done quicker, more efficiently, and then have, some downtime or spend more time with your family. That's one of the things that, some people say when they feel like they don't have the abundance of time when all of us have the same amount of time, right? We all have the same amount of time in a day. So it's just the difference is how we choose to use it. And then at the end of the day, when we're reflecting, do we feel that that we maximized it, that we used it wisely, or are we upset with ourselves? And, we all make, choices sometimes where maybe we're not so proud of ourselves or we're like, oh, why did it take me so long to do that? Try not to beat yourself up over it, but make sure that you're observing, why did it take you, what was difficult about it? Do a little, note taking and write down like, when I was working on this post content, I got distracted, or, when I was working on this statement of work for a proposal, I, read a text or I answered the phone, which I don't recommend that you do, by the way. If you're doing focused work time, meaning, if you have deadlines, you need to let, you need to focus on your deadlines. And unless there's some kind of an emergency, you need to let technology answer your phone and then know that you can return those phone calls later. Because I feel that, as helpful as our phones are, they can also be a distraction and they can, actually prevent us from meeting the deadlines that we have to meet, for, you know, uh, whatever we're working on with our clients, whether it's a deliverable, whether it's, getting reports over to them, statistics or metrics, whatever the case is. So, make sure that you don't put yourself in a situation where, you know you've gotten distracted and then now, you're staying up until 2 a.m. to try to get the work done when we're really not the sharpest. Most of us are not the sharpest later in the day. I prefer, doing the focused work, earlier in the day, and make sure you know, you work out or you do some kind of physical activity because that obviously helps, our mental sharpness and really, uplifts us and makes us feel good. So, make sure that you're not sitting too long and you're not, giving yourself what you need to function at your best. But it's already been 20 minutes. I can't believe it. I thought I was going to try to do this in like 10 or 15. So let me know if you have any time tips. Like I said, probably my biggest one is, just working in 15-minute increments. And the other thing, as a reminder, is just, making sure that you're not overloading your to do list. Because when I used to have that long list of things to do and most of the things got carried over, uh, it, you know, it felt like it was weighing me down and it was such a burden because I wasn't doing most of the things anyways. Like a lot of the things were nice to do. I would like to do this, but it wasn't absolutely necessary in the role that I was in at that time. It wasn't like it wasn't critical. So it wasn't until I really started getting super clear on, what's really going to make the biggest impact and then putting those things down as opposed to, well, it would be nice to do this and it would be nice to do that. But in the whole big scheme of things, if it's really not going to make an impact, and be revenue producing or lead to revenue producing, chances are it's not necessary. So please do share your time tips. I'd also love to know if, do you agree? Do you think that there's an abundance of time, or do you believe that, that there's not enough time in the day? That, and if you do, I can relate because I've felt like that before. And I felt very restricted, like I felt like I was running in quicksand. That's not a good feeling. But there are ways to get around that, and ways to open up your mindset so that you also agree, there's an abundance of time. We can, you know, look at ways that you can, you can figure out, you know, why don't you feel that you're using your time as wisely as you could, or why don't you feel that there's enough time in the day, and then, you know, make some new decisions. Sometimes it's just changing one thing, that can really open up your mind and really free you from those restrictions. Like there's not enough time. Because I remember those days, and it was, uh, it just always felt like there was a burden on my shoulder. Like no matter what I did, like I said, like running in quicksand, no matter what did, it just felt like I didn't have enough time or you know, wasn't able to check off all those things on my list. So do share your tips. I hope that the few tips that I offered were helpful to you. If you, in fact, are looking to, you know, get some of your time back, or, spend your time in a way where you can feel really good, like, yes, I made a wise decision. But I would definitely recommend, above everything else, when whether you're doing personal household chores or you're doing work chores, if you do set your timer for 15-minute increments, I would love to know, what's your result. Do you agree? If you try this, do you feel like you're getting more done in less time? you know uh, how does it feel to you? So let me know. Share your tips, like I said, and I will look forward to seeing everyone soon. Okay? Goodbye, everyone.